Well, they have a plan, and I'm going to show it to you. It's documented, it's sourced, and it's aimed at this year's midterm elections. And I'll tell you something up front that most videos on this don't tell you. The plan can't actually work. It cannot actually work. The courts won't let it, and the calendar won't let it. So, why should we care? Well, stick around because by the end of this video, you'll understand that this plan was never designed to work. It's designed to do something else. And that something else is very much on schedule and it's very frightening. I'm Jonathan Burton, and we have a few dots to connect, three to be exact. So let's get started. Dot number one, Thursday night, this past Thursday, July 9th, 2026, Trump fired the last remaining members of the Election Assistance Commission. Now, you may never have heard of this little agency. I know I hadn't. So let's take 30 seconds to figure out what it is and why it's so important. The EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, is the small bipartisan federal agency that referees the machinery of our elections. And it has two big jobs that matter here. The first is it certifies voting machines, the testing labs, the federal standards, the stamp of approval that states require by law, all that kind of thing. The second job is, and this is the big one, it maintains the National Mail-in Voter Registration Form. All right, keep that in mind. That's one federal form created by Congress in 1993 that anyone in any state can use to register to vote. So states can have their own forms, but the federal government has this particular form, and it is mandated in 46 states. Four states are exempt for one reason or another, but all 46 of the remaining states are required to accept this federal form. And whoever controls this commission, the EAC commission, controls what that form can require people to answer when they register to vote by mail. All right. Now, why does that matter? Because the Trump regime has been trying to get a proof of citizenship requirement onto this very form. And they've tried twice in the legal way. Once in March in 2025, Trump signed an executive order ordering the EAC to add it, but federal judges permanently blocked it, and they ruled the president has no authority to give that agency orders because Congress deliberately made it independent. But of course, that's never the end of the story with this guy, is it? Because this lawless president never takes a no from the courts as the final word. So, according to Reuters, White House officials then spent months pressuring the commissioners on the EAC to do it themselves, but the commissioners wouldn't play along. So Thursday night, this past Thursday night, he fired them. He fired the two remaining Democrats. That left one Republican on the commission, but that Republican resigned too. So apparently he wasn't on board with it either. Well, I'm assuming it's a man, but he or she wasn't on board with it either. So all of them, the remaining commissioners, were effectively kicked out right before the midterms. Now, dot number two, Reuters talked to four separate sources who say that while all this pressure was failing, the White House was working on Plan B, which was a way to get around the EAC entirely. And one of the ideas on the table, which was pushed through the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard at the time, was to declare a national emergency over the voting system and then create a federal task force that could compel the states to change how they run elections. Now, he started all of this in around March of last year, March 2025. So there was time. They were thinking about doing it for this year's elections, but it's too late now. Thank God. It's too late, but we're not out of the dark yet because, first of all, think about why you would need an emergency to have this question put on a voter registration form, because the courts already told them the legal route was closed. And when the front door is locked, they start looking for a back door because they're desperate and they're lawless. And they start talking about emergencies. So that's how the emergency talk started. We don't have to guess what they do with a big national electoral emergency or how they'd use that because their wish list is on paper. It's written down already. The Washington Post reported in February of this year that activists coordinating with the White House were circulating a 17-page draft order. Democracy Docket got a copy of the actual order. I'll put a link to it in the description. You can click on it and download the whole thing and look at it. I've looked at it. It is unbelievable. And I haven't had time to read through the whole thing. Don't know if I will, but I would suggest to you to do so, to read as much of it as you can. The more of you we can, the more, the more of you guys, the more people we can get reading this, the more people who are well informed, the better off we'll all be. All right. But here's what it would order. And I'm not making any of this up. It would order that every voter, this is what they wanted to order last year. This is what this order said last year. It would order every voter in America to re-register before the midterms this year. Now you can see why that can't happen. It's too late now. But they wanted all of us. You've been registered since you were 18 years old. You got to re-register now. They wanted voter ID with proof of citizenship. They want mail-in voting restricted. They want ballots counted by hand. They want ranked choice voting banned because apparently they lose more of those types of elections than Democrats do. And all of this by presidential decree, powers that the Constitution does not give to the president. It explicitly gives these powers only to the states and to the Congress. So we now know that obviously this isn't going to happen for this year's midterms because obviously it's too late. And there's no way it would be physically or logistically possible to re-register every single American voter in the next 3.5 months. So that's not going to happen. There's no way any state could get up to speed on hand counting the votes either. Did I mention that? This order would also mandate all votes be hand counted, all machines thrown out. It's, I mean, there's no way the states could do that. They'd have to hire thousands of new people and train them. And it's just simply not possible, thankfully. So this is obviously not going to happen this year anyway, but that's not the end of the story. Because with these people, it's never the end of the story. So that takes us to dot number 3. And this is where it gets strange. There's an 80-year-old Florida lawyer named Peter Ticktin, and he met Trump in military school back in the 1950s. They call him Trump's boyhood pal, and he was in the Oval Office as recently as last week. So they still talk. He is a crazy person, and we know there's one man, the most important man in the country, who has a particular fondness for crazy people. And he has a fondness for this crazy man. CNN reports that Ticktin has already helped draft the executive order that would declare a national emergency based on the claim that foreign countries rigged the 2020 election. Now keep listening. But which foreign country? Would they say it's China? Would they say it's Russia, Iran, Venezuela? Well, there's a draft for that. If if you want to say China's the one meddling in the elections, they have a draft for that. If you want to say it's Venezuela, there's a draft for that. The 17-page version says China did it. Ticktin's version says Venezuela did it. Now, remember, a few years ago when they came out with this ludicrous story that Hugo Chavez of Venezuela helped develop the voting machines, remember that story? And then Chavez had them all rigged or something. And then when Nicolás Maduro became president of Venezuela, he got in on the act, so they say. And the Venezuelans configured the machines so that they could cheat the American elections. That's the story. The story that was so ludicrous that it got the lawyers who pushed it sanctioned and sued. So as far as they're concerned, the villain, the foreign country who meddles in our elections, is interchangeable. It could be China or Russia or Cuba. It doesn't matter. It could be Iran. It doesn't matter. The guilty country is a plug-in variable. The emergency is the product. But every version has the same problem. There's no evidence. Every court, every audit in 2020 came up empty. The Trump people filed 63 lawsuits or legal cases in 2020 in courts around the country, federal courts, state courts. They lost all of them. They even lost ones where the judges had been appointed by Trump. in his first term. So where's the evidence? Where do they get the evidence from? Where are they going to get the evidence from that there's some electoral emergency in the country and emergency measures have to be taken? Ticktin says the proof arrives when Nicolás Maduro starts talking from federal custody. Now, I want to say this carefully because I only claim what I can prove, and I can't prove anyone's offering Maduro a deal. No one has said that. But one of the very first thoughts that crossed my mind when he was arrested in January and abducted from Venezuela and brought here is that they could easily persuade him to testify that the voting machines were, in fact, rigged. So that's certainly not outside the realm of possibility. I, I thought that when they arrested him. I even wondered if that possibly was the reason that they arrested him in January of this year. What I can tell you is former DHS official Miles Taylor. Now, this guy is a big hero, in my opinion. He stands up. He's not afraid to speak the truth. He was one of the few Republicans that came out during Trump's first term and basically, let the cat out of the bag and told us what was really going on. He has done so now at considerable personal cost for he and his wife and his family. They're going through a hard time right now, but he has been fearless in speaking up. So he reports that some observers believe the administration wants to induce Maduro to confirm the story that Venezuela did indeed, in fact, somehow rig the machines in exchange for leniency. And all I can tell you is this: Maduro is sitting in an American prison cell in New York City with every reason in the world to say whatever gets him out of it. And forget a judge, forget about the judge. They couldn't care less if a judge believes this story. All they want to do is convince enough people watching regime media, enough MAGA people, to give the officials in red states who already want to act on this a permission slip. I mean, think about the absurdity of it all. The sole evidence for a rigged election would be rigged testimony from a captured dictator negotiating for his freedom. This is how absurd this whole thing is. But this is the type of thing they do over and over and over again. They never stop pulling this kind of crap. All right, now let's come back to what I said at the top. This can't actually work. Even if Maduro were to testify tomorrow, this can't work. Trump can't cancel or postpone the election this year already. It's too late. He can't re register 160 Americans in less than 4 months. That's obvious. It's just simply not physically or logistically possible. And the courts would freeze the order within days. If he issued some kind of emergency order, the courts would freeze it within days. They would say, no, you can't do that. So we're safe, right? No, not so fast. Because here's the real gig. Here's what their real game plan could realistically be. Issue the emergency election order in September. Say the election was rigged, some, foreign country got involved, so we have an emergency now. We have to step in. The federal government has to step in. Let that get struck down in October. And then they've manufactured their narrative for November. Millions of people voted without verified registration. You know, that's all. They set it up in September, October, and then November. They say, hey, this election was rigged. It was rigged. So the order fails, but the doubt it plants in people's mind succeeds. And that's the danger. The plan doesn't need to survive court, it just needs to survive long enough to poison the result. That's why many believe it's drafted today. This whole order, the 17-page order to call an emergency election response, it's drafted now, but it's not signed. It's not sitting in a drawer though because they gave up on it. It's sitting in a drawer because it isn't September yet. So connect the dots. I'm not telling you what's in their heads. I'm showing you the documented sequence. They tried to order the referees to change the rules. The court said no. They tried pressuring the referees, but the refs dragged their feet. They wrote up the emergency decree and the wish list. CNN and Democracy Docket have the receipts. And Thursday night, they fired the referees. So every move removes an obstacle to the same outcome. If those are coincidences, they're the most organized coincidences I've ever seen. And if you think the president would never actually dare, He already did. There are two agencies that police federal elections. The EAC referees the machinery, the Federal Election Commission referees the money, contribution limits, disclosure, campaign finance law. In January 2025, Trump removed FEC Commissioner Ellen Weintraub, a Democrat. No president has ever removed an opposing party's commissioner without naming a replacement. By May of 2025, the FEC didn't have enough members to legally function. It hasn't been able to enforce campaign finance law for over a year. So, heading into this midterm, with record money flooding in, the money referee can't act. And as of Thursday night, the machinery referee doesn't exist. Both election watchdogs in America are neutered just before the midterms. How convenient. Have you ever seen a president work so tirelessly to cheat an election? I'm telling you, we have the most lawless man in the White House that we've ever had in our history. Miles Taylor said, if this emergency comes, be ready to call it what it is, a farce, and consider this video a warning and a heads up. Now, you know the play before they run it. In September, if we see any of this, if we see an emergency order declaring the machines have been somehow compromised by a foreign country, and then Maduro is suddenly confessing, yeah, we did it, or that millions of non-citizens are voting, that they're claiming that, then in October, we could see rulings from courts saying there's no evidence for any of these things. So, no, you're denied. You can't have your emergency. But then in November comes the narrative. And the narrative could give some Republican state leaders just the cover they need to declare an emergency or to do what Trump begged Brad Raffensperger to do in Georgia in 2020, just find me 17,000 more votes. The basic idea is that they'll do whatever it takes to cause enough chaos in November that Democrats will never be allowed to take over if they win, which it looks like they're going to win. Uh, so we have to be ready to stand up to all that. All right. They are literally looking for any excuse. They're looking to sow chaos so they can have some excuse to try to steal the election and try to get away with it. So if that's what we see happen, we won't be confused, and neither will anybody you share this with. And by the way, I'm putting links to all my sources in the description so you can check them out. And they're good. They're good reads. They're good reads if you want to have a better understanding of what's going on instead of just getting one story at a time. When the story came out this week about the EAC and their commissioners being fired, I was like, what is that all about? Anyway, that's how I put all this together because I started looking into it. I was curious what it was about, and it really led down this rabbit trail. All right, that's it for me. 3 dots, one story. You know where to find me. I'll see you next time. Take care.